Uh, Once again, we're going to travel back to yesterday and look at the Houston Texans versus the Indianapolis Colts. Really thought this was kind of a back and forth game. I expected the Texans to take a little bit more control, but Anthony Richards for the Colts made just enough plays. Uh, hit that bomb, and did some things with his feet. Jonathan Taylor was not as much of a factor as I thought he might be in the game, and C.J. Stroud looked a little off there yesterday for my liking. I thought he'd come in with a better game to start out the year with having his new weapon and Stephon Diggs there. But did enough to win. And sometimes you got to kick off some of that rust early on and get a W. And I think that's exactly what the Texans did. Uh, the only thing that I see moving forward is I do think the Texans are going to have to take it up a notch defensively in order to take that next step, especially against some of the teams in the AFC. The AFC is just so loaded that they are going to have to perform at a little higher level, and they might have that ability. But for them to make that deep playoff run, the defense is going to have to step it up. What are your thoughts on today on that
I
ball
mean,
game?
yeah, I would agree with that. I think I'm not too worried about the Texans defensively necessarily. Meaning offensively, I thought Stroud was fine. Threw for 230, a couple touchdowns. But to me, the big thing was they just Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon ran for 160, and I mean they were able to control possession and everything. And when you have a running back carry the ball 30 times for over 5 yards per carry and find the end zone, I thought they'd open it up a little bit more with all their weapons at wide receiver specifically, and that wasn't necessarily the case. But that could have been game plan. Curious to see how that is going forward. Anthony Richardson, I'm not all that high on him. He hit two big plays. He hit Pierce and was it Dolan? Is that his name? For a 60 and a 50-yard, 4-yard touchdown. Like he hit a couple bombs. He ended up 9 and 19 for 212 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then the one interception. So I'm not. He's all right. Curious to see how they go because you mentioned Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor, 16 carries for 48 yards, so nothing too special there, but did find the end zone. So
Yeah, I just thought that with the Texans there, if once they tighten up that defense, don't allow anybody over the top. I think they'll be. I think they can be in good shape.
yeah.
And what the code have to say about this one?
So this was one of those that, and you hear it a lot in the betting circles. If you have in the NFL, it's one of the biggest systems of the NFL. Week one divisional home dogs hit at an
Yep.
insane 70% clip. Depending on how it depends on how far back you go, but it is one of the most profitable systems in the NFL. Um, we liked the Colts. We hit the Colts -2 is where we made this line approximately 24-22, which then also had a slight play look to the under, which the game ended up going over, and the Texans ended up winning. But when you look at the side of it, depending on when you got the line, if it was 2, 2.5, 3, you could have won that bet with the Colts still. And again, that's just one of those system plays. We didn't give that game out just because there was too much unknown, I'll call it. Um, but overall, relatively, again, a few more points than we had projected. Um, but I mean, that was mainly on the Houston Texans side of things. And if there aren't two big bombs, the game probably is right around that number, maybe even goes under. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was. I think this is the one where the code was close, but this is definitely where we make a and you make adjustments on this to decide if the variances are there enough to bet,
yeah,
and
it wasn't
it
enough
just
for us
wasn't.
to actually
It
have to
wasn't
play.
enough. It wasn't enough. So this is one of these times where we were close. We were close with it, but didn't pull the trigger, and I agree with not pulling the trigger on that one. And this was a game where the bounce of the ball goes one way or the other, and the Colts win the ball game. It just didn't. It just didn't happen this time. So, with that, we move on to the next game.